everybody, and welcome back to the Gaming Mix podcast. We've been away for a little while. If you don't know me, my name is Jordan. This is your podcast from analogstickgaming.com, and to my left, as always, is the founder of Analog Stick Gaming, Jeff. How are you, Jeff?
Oh, not too bad. Just realized I forgot to take my painkiller. This is gonna be great.
Oh, that's fun. That's very fun. I luckily am not on medication anymore, but as you may have realised, we've been missing for a few weeks, and that's because I was very ill. And Jeff knows that I often get ill anyway, but this was like a different level of
It's
illness.
only on it's only on days that end in Y. It's fine.
Oh god. So so I apologise that we did miss the big Xbox business update, which ultimately, let's be real, ended up being nothing other than what they've already been telling people they were going to do for years and years. But if you missed it, there are 4 games coming to other platforms from Xbox's first party studios. Other than that, nothing is really changing for you in the immediate future. So there's that quick kind of recap of the last few weeks, because we have a lot of news this week, don't we, Jeff? So why don't we
Yeah,
jump straight in the mix of the news here? Because I think you've got about 10 news stories or something like that. So
I've got lots. We'll see how it goes. All right. So, Gearbox could be closer than ever to being sold off by its parent company, Embracer Group, according to a new report. All this news comes to us from VGC. Sources have reportedly told Kotaku that Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford held a town hall meeting with his staff this week and told them that a decision has been made regarding the studio's future, with more information to be shared in March. According to the report, Pitchford has been telling staff for months that Gearbox's 3 options were to stay with Embracer, get sold to another company, or buy itself out and become independent. Kotaku claimed that a decision has been made to sell Gearbox to another company and that the deal is being finalized. Refusing to confirm or deny the report, Pitchford told Kotaku, "I'm delighted that what we might be up to is interesting enough to people that you'll want to make a story about us for your readers." He added, "As always, we'll be thrilled to share whenever we have projects to announce or news to share as we work hard towards our mission to entertain the world." So obviously, Gearbox is not being shut down. They've got a Borderlands movie that's going to make them like a good chunk of money.
yes,
Um, so yeah, like, all right. So let's
I'm
say they're being sold.
gonna. So it sounds like they are being sold to another company, and I
Yeah.
think that just for the fun of it, we should make bets on who we think that company is.
Well,
Immediately, I'm going to rule out Microsoft because I don't think it's them. For some reason in my head, the company that I immediately went to was Warner Brothers.
I don't know if it would be Warner Brothers because to me, Warner Brothers has almost sounded like they've almost not wanted to get out of gaming, but not
Not
really
fully in
like,
on it, right? But the reason I say Warner Brothers is if we
yeah,
look at the type of game they are chasing, and clearly
yeah,
have been chasing for quite some time,
yeah.
Gearbox does that type of game very, very well. And I just
Yeah.
wonder whether that could fit really well into their business plan. Other than that, I think it's a hard one, right?
Well,
Because it could be Tencent, it
Warner
could be like, who are the other
Warner could be it.
possibilities?
Warner could be it because let's say, for example, that they worked a deal out for the distribution of
The movie.
any of their future films.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is what I mean.
So,
Like, Warner was the one that I jumped to. But other than that, I do wonder what the possibilities are, because it's not going to be someone like Ubisoft. I don't think they've got enough capital
no.
to even do that.
And
I can't
EA basically just like laid off a whole bunch of people.
I can't really see it being I can't see it being EA. Could it be Take Two again? Like, could they go back to the Take Two situation? I don't know.
Well, Zelnick basically he quoted himself as well saying that like he was happy with like the publishing deal that they kind of had and that was about it. Like it didn't
Precisely.
sound like
So
he was interested.
I would find Microsoft a really weird one. Obviously, you can never rule out Microsoft because of the amount of money that they actually have available to them. But
Yeah.
I would find it a really weird one for them because to me it doesn't fit. It just doesn't
Mm.
fit what they want to do. The other one that would make a ton of sense is obviously Sony because they already make movies. They make very, very good video games. They're good at sort of tying those things together and translating them across different types of media. So could
I
it
don't know
be?
if they want to shell out that kind of money
Yeah,
to us to acquire a studio because like they
especially
literally
when they're
just
not
like
making as much money as they usually do. So
yeah.
it's
I don't think it's Sony.
it's
I
gonna
think
be.
WB is a good one, but like Tencent as well too.
I mean, I hope it's not Tencent, but put it this way: we've been here complaining at this point for months now about how Embracer should be willing to sell, especially these bigger studios, right? And
Yeah.
if I can tie in another bit of news at the minute, we just heard recently that Toys for Bob is going independent from Microsoft and Activision. Um, and that,
Yeah, actually jump into that and then we can uh actually let's do the next two and then
and then we'll
we can
jump
continue
into a bigger discussion. Yeah,
because these are all centered around studios going independent. So Skylanders and Crash Bandicoot developer Toys for Bob has announced plans to go independent. The California-based studio was acquired by Activision in 2005 and has worked on a variety of Skylanders, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, and Call of Duty games since then. However, in a new statement released today by studio heads Paul Yan and Avery Lodato, it was announced that the developer would be going it alone. Over the years, we have inspired love, joy, and laughter in the inner child in all gamers, the statement reads. We pioneered the new IP and hardware technologies in Skylanders. We raised the bar for best in class remasters in Spyro Reignited Trilogy, and we've taken Crash Bandicoot to innovative, critically acclaimed new heights. With the same enthusiasm and passion, we believe now is the time to take the studio and our future games to the next level. This opportunity allows us to return to the roots of being a small and nimble studio. Skylanders and Crash Bandicoot Toys for Bob is leaving Activision. Okay, well, that's the same thing. Um, in their statement, Jan and Lodato also say that despite the decision to go independent, they're exploring a possible partnership with Microsoft. And while we're in the early days of developing our next new game and a ways away from making any announcements, our team is excited to develop new stories, new characters, and new gameplay experiences. Our friends at Activision and Microsoft have been extremely supportive of our new direction, and we're confident that we will work together closely in part of our future. And to add to that, Embracer Group is reportedly set to sell Saber Interactive in a deal worth up to $500 million. A Bloomberg report cited a source familiar with the transaction, saying the studio is being sold to a group of private investors. The deal will result in Sabre becoming a privately owned company with around 3,500 employees in total across its studios worldwide. Sabre will also reportedly continue to work on its remake of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic following the deal. Um, so yeah, like I'm gonna skip some of this stuff here. So that's the one thing that kind of surprised me the most. Saber Interactive has 3,500 staff members.
yeah,
That is insane. And like
but they are
there's a reason why.
everywhere, right?
Yeah, like you see like honestly there's like 6 games a year practically coming out from Saber Interactive.
Yeah,
Um so yeah, like you've got Saber Interactive and Toys for Bob essentially going independent.
yeah.
Um
However,
you know like
just to jump in on that for a minute, because I wanted to make a point that was connected
yeah,
to the Gearbox situation. Credit to Microsoft because it sounds like they're effectively just allowing Toys for Bob to go independent. Um, and it
yeah,
doesn't sound like, it's not like they're being bought by another investor or anything like that. But what I find really interesting about that situation is it's almost like, yeah, okay, you go independent and do the thing you want to do. It gives you more freedom and more flexibility to
And
float
it's less
your
money
options
Microsoft has
around.
to pay out too.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
if you think about, you know,
but what I think is really interesting is, oh, we're actually exploring the possibility of still being in a partnership of some kind, you
yeah,
know, and I actually think that's really clever because I have a feeling that Toys for Bob's next game is going to be a brand new Spyro game. I think that's
I don't think it will be Spyro because I don't think they're going to use someone else's property. I think they're going to create a whole new IP that
interesting.
they own.
Interesting. I mean, they
There's no reason
should.
for them. There's
They
no reason
should
for them to
because
go
they need
independent
to.
and make a Spyro game.
Yeah, that's true. But then but then I wonder whether part of this is. This is where I was going to go with it. We know that Microsoft has also been doing cost cutting in gaming recently, along with
Yeah,
everybody else. And I wonder whether there was a conversation of, look, either we're going to shut you down or something needs to change here. And if it was, oh, actually, we're happy to let you go independent, that's something Embracers should do more of. Because if you're not going to
yeah. If
use
the
these
studio can afford
studios,
it, I mean,
and
Saber found private investors, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
So
what I mean is, somebody like Free Radical, what was to stop Embracer going, oh yeah, okay, you guys go independent. We will still retain the rights to this game that you're working on and be the publisher of it. But then after that, if you so choose, you can go and work. You're now independent. You can go and float your ideas around to different places.
yeah,
um, so I'm really intrigued to see what happens with the Gearbox situation, just because whether people like it or not, Gearbox is a big developer at this point. They have a franchise that people care about. When you have a franchise that is big enough that they make a movie based on that franchise, then you have something, right? You have something that translates. And I'm really intrigued to see where they end up. I think the Toys for Bob situation is good for everybody because they're not stuck on Call of Duty for eternity now, and they can just go and kind of do their own thing. I think that even if they end up in some sort of long-term partnership with Microsoft, that might actually be a good thing because that gives them a level of security on the publisher side of things that is hard
yeah,
to find in this current climate of gaming. And I'm happy to see, Saber Interactive finding a way to escape the terrible situation at Embracer over the last year or so.
yeah. And it's like a decent chunk of money. You know, like the investors probably
Yeah.
paid that and then continue to pay
And
their development, but
hopefully, let's be
a lot of
real, hopefully that 500 million plus whatever money they get from the Gearbox situation should be enough to at least stop some of this craziness that's been happening at Embracer.
Yeah, he would hope so. Like my concern as well too is like Saber having that much staff and then going
Yeah.
independent
Yeah, of
is
course.
that's gonna lead to layoffs.
Oh, it is. It
And
is.
I
But
don't think they
but
can.
one thing I would say on that, and I don't mean to be overly negative, but I think something people have realized over the last month or so is the industry is just in a very weird place, and these layoffs were going to happen anyway, because I think that over the last number of years, probably even before COVID, there was an over expansion, if you like, within the industry. And I actually think that what's happened with these cuts in the last couple of years is almost like, as horrible as it is to say, it's the industry normalizing itself again. Because, we're as we've got in the news, which we'll talk about in a second, we're seeing more studios still make massive cuts and cancel projects and everything. So why don't we get to some of that news, Jeff?
Sure, let me just bring it back. Document here. All right. So Electronic Arts has announced a restructuring plan that will see it lay off approximately 5% of its global workforce. The company has employed 13,400 staff as of March 2023, according to its most recent annual filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commissions, meaning it could be cutting around 670 jobs. EA CEO Andrew Wilson, the android that we all know he is, said in a letter to employees, given how we are given how and when we are continuing to optimize our global real estate footprint to best support our business. We are also sunsetting games and moving away from development of future licensed IP that we do not believe will be successful in our changing industry. This greater focus allows us to dive creatively, accelerate innovation, and double down on our biggest opportunities, including our owned IP, sports, and massive online communities to deliver the entertainment players want today and tomorrow. Lastly, we'll be streamlining our company operations to deliver deeper, more connected experiences for fans everywhere that build community, shape culture, and grow fandom. Wilson said of the layoffs, while not every team will be impacted, this is the hardest part of these changes, and we have deeply considered every option to try and limit impacts to our teams. Our primary goal is to provide team members with opportunities to find new roles and paths to transition onto other projects. Where that's not possible, we will support and work with each colleague with the utmost attention, care, and respect. Communicating these impacts has already begun and we will largely completed by early next quarter. EA said the actions associated with this restructuring plan are expected to be substantially complete by the end of the calendar year. GameIndustry.biz is reporting that EA has canceled a licensed game as part of this plan. An EA representative told the site that the company's Black Panther and Iron Man games are still in development. It was previously announced that Star Wars Jedi studio Respawn was also working on at least 2 more Star Wars games. EA announced a similar restructuring plan last March when it said it would be laying off 6% of its workforce, a move believed to have impacted around 775 employees. Now, since the story posted on VGC, they've had a couple updates. So, sources have told VGC that as part of the cuts, EA has canceled an in development Star Wars first person shooter at Respawn. They have since confirmed this. Respawn's unique ability to connect with players and create exceptional game experiences is unrivaled in entertainment. This was said by Laura Melee, EA Entertainment President. As we look at Respawn's portfolio over the last few months, what's clear is that the games our players are most excited about are Jedi and Respawn's rich library of owned brands. Knowing this, we have decided to pivot away from early development on a Star Wars FPS action game to focus our efforts on new projects based on our own brands while providing support for existing games. It's always hard to walk away from a project, and this decision is not a reflection of the team's talent, tenacity, or passion they have for the game. Giving fans the next installments of the iconic franchises they want is the definition of blockbuster storytelling and the right place to focus. We've had another update. EA has closed Ridgeline Games, the studio formed in 2021 to work on a future Battlefield single-player game. The Seattle-based studio was established in late 2021 and has been staffing up for its debut project, which was described as a narrative campaign in the Battlefield universe. Last week, it was confirmed that the studio's co-founder, Halo creator Marcus Leto,
Yeah.
had departed the studio for apparent personal reasons.
Can
Leto
I
reacted,
just jump in there?
yeah,
Um, so he did leave, and I suspect that that's because he knew this was happening. I, given that
really,
he was studio leadership, and it's such a shame because you know all of this, as Jeff goes on, but all of this basically says to me, oh, we're afraid to try new things, so we're gonna just stick to what we know makes money and what we know people like, and
well, the rumor was one of the the Mandalorian game apparently was canceled as well
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Mm. Which is
it's
not based off the show. It's based off the fact that you play as just a
yeah,
Mandalorian that
and
you
it's but
create.
that's so weird because why would you cancel that? Like that is going to make money.
Yeah, exactly. Like I have no idea, but I mean the canceled Battlefield game through Ridgeline. I hope that was not Bad Company 3.
I hope so as well. Yeah, I really hope it wasn't that, because man, that game, if that game ever comes, it will do so well. It will do so well.
It was the last time I cared about Battlefield at all.
Yeah.
But EA is what it is. I know a lot of people hate EA and all that kind of stuff, and too. But I mean, they've been doing pretty good lately. They haven't had the full Capcom turnaround, but they've been producing some pretty decent stuff
Yeah.
lately.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, like 5% of its workforce is what it is. It could
And,
be
and
worse.
one thing I will say, and I don't want to be too positive about this kind of thing, but
Yeah,
5% is a lot lower than what other companies have been cutting in recent times.
yeah.
And it is, unfortunately, we live in a reality where when you are a public company such as EA, Microsoft, Sony, all those kind of companies, you have to strive for consistent growth every single
Oh,
year. And
I don't know why they just don't.
even if you're making money, when that growth is stagnating,
Yeah.
making money isn't good enough. And that's why
See,
cuts like this happen.
why don't they just discount some FIFA team?
Yeah.
Put FIFA team at like 40% off,
hmm
and you'll have so much money rolling in
Yeah.
during that period.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't know. I don't know. There are
like,
ways to make other money, and I think Phil Spencer said it best the other week during that Xbox Update podcast and the interviews around it. He said that unfortunately there's two ways to maintain growth in this industry, and it is you either try and do something to get more money from the players you already have, which is things like microtransactions or raising game prices, and
yeah,
he kind of frowns upon those things as much as possible, or you do the thing they're trying to do, which is you try and access a bigger audience, right? The problem for someone like EA is they're already a multi platform publisher. They already have some of the biggest games in the world. I don't think they can really reach a bigger audience. And so this to me sounds very much like them almost doing the Ubisoft thing, which is let's focus on the audience we know we have and let's deliver the products they want us to deliver. But the issue with that is you might fall into the same trap that Ubisoft did, where you end up making the same games over and over and over and over again. And I know, perhaps, I don't know if you have it in the story, Jeff, but it has been confirmed that another Jedi game, the next Cal Kestis adventure, is being
was
worked on
confirmed.
still. Um,
Oh, in response to the Leto stuff, I only had like one sentence left.
okay.
Leto reacted to the news on X on Wednesday, suggesting he was unaware of the plans to close Ridgeline.
Oh, interesting. Oh, oh no. That's
Yeah.
oh man. I
So
mean,
it could
I
it
mean
could
that's
it could be
that's
that he had
almost as
actual personal
bad.
reasons.
That's almost as bad as a situation where Jim Ryan turns up at a studio to say goodbye last week. And what
Oh,
happened to that studio?
I got that in the doc. I
What
got that
happened
in the
to
doc.
that studio, Jeff?
Oh dear Lord. All right, here we'll jump to that one right now. All right. So PlayStation is set to lay off around 900 employees worldwide. The news was confirmed in a statement by current SIE president and CEO Jim Ryan, who is, set to sit down next month, thankfully, who said the company had made the extremely hard decision to reduce its overall headcount by about 8% or about 900 people. The layoffs will include the entire closure of PlayStation London studio. Um, the story, I think I do, but we'll see. So we had an update here. So President Studio boss Herman Hulst has commented on the news. Hulst said that the platform folder is re-evaluating how we operate, and that the layoffs will also have resulted in the cancellation of several unnamed game projects. These are incredibly talented people who have been part of our success, and we are very grateful for their contributions, Jim Ryan's statement reads. However, the industry has changed immensely, and we need to future ready ourselves to set the business up for what lies ahead. We will need to deliver on expectations from developers and gamers and continue to propel future technology in gaming. So we took a step back to ensure that we were set up to continue to bring the best gaming experiences to the community. A separate statement from SIE also confirmed that Insomniac Games, Naughty Dog, Guerrilla, and PlayStation's technology, creative, and support teams will also be impacted by a reduction in workforce. Ryan also shared the company-wide email, which was sent to staff today, explaining the plans in more detail. The email states that there will be a headcount reduction of around 900 people, or about 8% of our current workforce. The layoffs will impact employees across all Sony Interactive Entertainment regions. Several PlayStation studios will be affected. US employees affected by the layoff will be told today, while in the UK it has been proposed that PlayStation London Studios will close in its entirety. Firesprite Studios will see reductions, and there will be reductions in various functions across SIE in the UK. PlayStation is cutting around 900 jobs staff worldwide, around 8% of its workforce. It was announced that in 2022, Sony's London studio was working on an online co-op combat game set in a fantasy London. The status of the game is now unclear. For those who will be leaving SIE, Ryan's email continues, you are leaving this company with our deepest respect and appreciation for all your efforts during your tenure. For those who will be staying at SIE, we will be saying goodbye to friends and colleagues that we will cherish during the process, and this will be painful. Your resilience, sensitivity, and adaptiveness will be critical in the weeks and months to come. This will not be easy, and I am aware of the impact it will have on well-being. Affected employees will receive support, several severance benefits. While these are challenging times, it's not indicative of a lack of strength of our company, our brand, or our industry. Our goal is to remain agile and adaptable and continue to focus on delivering the best gaming experiences possible now and in the future. This news makes PlayStation the latest in the long line of companies making layoffs in recent times, a trend that shows no sign of easing up. You think Jim Ryan, when he was visiting that London studio,
He
was
knew.
like
He
eyeing the
knew.
room, going, what can I do with all this space?
I tell you now, the bad thing about that situation is I guarantee you that when he went there, he knew already. He knew already that all of those people were about to
Yeah,
lose their jobs. And full disclosure, before I speak about this more, I do have friends that have lost their jobs as a result of this particular situation. Um,
yeah.
Obviously, I'm based in the UK, and the UK has been hit hard by these Sony cuts in particular. Um,
I thought you were in Jersey.
um, but I look, I just, I, to me, that is lacking humanity. That to me is lacking humanity. Unless he literally went there to kind of go in and spend the day and explain to them all, you know, I'm really, really sorry, this is what was happening. Maybe that is why he went there. But if it
Well,
isn't,
I'm pretty sure people would have been saying it on Twitter, going, "Yeah, Jim Ryan just showed up, said, hey, how's everybody doing?" and then
precisely,
quietly fired.
and to me that really is a problem. Like, at least if you're gonna do this, have some humanity about it. Like, I know that it's business, but don't turn up at the studio a week before and pose for pictures with people, smiling all over your face, knowing
Yeah,
that the following week they're all losing their jobs. Like, that's not good
and like,
enough.
and I can't remember who had said it on Twitter or anything like that, but they're like, Insomniac has been like
The
on a
strongest
fucking
studio.
roll,
They've literally
like one of the
carried them on
strongest
their
studios
back.
out there, and they had to terminate people. Like
Yeah.
that is so indicative
And
of
look,
where the industry is at right now.
don't get me wrong. This is an industry wide issue and something that even I'm not aware of has clearly happened on the back end to scare the life out of these business people. Like,
It's because of like all of the like public investments and investors and all that kind of stuff that are wanting returns. And most of these companies are probably
But
not
these,
generating enough
but
revenue
the thing
to
is
pay off those
though,
people.
I agree with that. But those people have always been involved in the business,
Oh,
and
for sure.
and they've been involved certainly for the last 10 years. So why is it blowing up all of a sudden? Like what? I know that okay, we're in a weird economic world right now, but has the economics become so bad that all of a sudden we have to basically kill the industry in
Well,
some
I think a lot
ways?
of these I think a lot of these investors are like, listen, it's like, like I made my money back last year, but I don't want to just make my money back.
Yeah.
I want to actually like turn a profit here. Like I don't want to invest, $20
There's
million
someone I
dollars and
spoke
only get
to
20 million back.
there's someone I spoke to that will remain anonymous because they are in quite a high up position within the industry. Um, but one of the things that they said to me, which sort of made sense, was that investors are less interested in putting money into gaming now because the return takes longer than it ever has before. So even though that return can be one of the biggest returns in the world, it can also fail, right? And when you have to wait that
Oh yeah.
long
I
for that element
Look
of risk, it's not really
look at any
worth it.
investors look at any investors currently with WB and stuff in terms of like Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
You have a lot of investors that are like, "Oh, Rocksteady can't fail."
Yeah. Yeah. So, I but this, like I said, this Sony situation in particular hurts, and it's not just for the London studio thing. I would have
Yeah.
liked to, because they've obviously been on VR games for the last few years, but for people who didn't know, back in the PS2 days, going into the PS3 days, they did make AAA console games, and I was quite excited to see them return to a more traditional non VR game again, just to see what they could do in the current landscape. So that one is
Yeah.
really upsetting. But the other upsetting part about it, to me, is the Fire Sprite situation, because in my head, why do you acquire a studio and then within a year or so go on to basically gut that studio entirely? you know, why even partner with the studio in the first place if you
It's
clearly.
they can't see the forest from the trees. They basically like, they purchase these studios with the intent of, trying to reach a trend or
Yeah.
something where they're like, "Oh, we need this studio
Uh,
working on this
well,
particular
that's
game."
that's my question to you, Jeff. Do you think that a lot of what we're seeing right now is a result of the last 5 years or so, the industry all sort of chasing each other and chasing these
Well, I mean,
trends that are now
yeah, like,
potentially dying out a bit? Our question of the week is about live service games, I believe, that you've come
yeah,
up with this week, and whether you still play them or not. And I would hazard a guess that the vast majority of people don't play live service games anymore. And
yeah,
that bubble is
or
well and
they've
truly
stuck with like
burst.
one, or
Yeah,
they've stuck with one, and then like I used to play a ton of Fortnite. I just don't have the time for it. Otherwise, I definitely would be playing more.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but and I've given up. Some like I haven't played Destiny 2 in
Yeah,
years now,
I
and I
gave
will
up
never touch.
I gave up Destiny
Yeah,
2 years ago. Really enjoyed it though, but I do think it's interesting because it goes back to that thing we always say about how gaming tastes change, gaming trends change, the way that people engage with games in general changes, and that live service games as service bubble that lasted for about 5 years is completely burst now. And I think that a lot of the top brass in the industry had made a bet that it was the future, right? And what's happening now is they're clearly wrong and they're trying to pivot, but that pivot means we now need to save money because we've just wasted hundreds of millions on these games that aren't going to work. Do you know what I mean? And it goes back to the EA situation of them talking about cutting some games that they don't think are going to work in the current gaming climate. I think that that's probably because they know that live service games don't really work anymore. And I think that, okay, Suicide Squad isn't an example of a good live service game, but what it is an example of is probably a live service game that made people look and go, well, if that can't do it, and you've got, you know, well known characters and well known IP to draw from, then what hope do we have? Kind of thing. You know what I mean? I do
Yeah, pretty
think.
much.
I think there's a massive pivot. I think that's why we've seen EA over the last 5 years or so slowly move back to some more single player stuff again, after they were one of the companies 10 years ago that was basically saying single player was dead. um you know, like, the industry is changing whether people like it or not, and some of those changes are good and some of them are bad. But I don't I'm never going to enjoy seeing people lose their jobs. Like I said, there is the business part of me that understands that at the end of the day, there is a business reality, and there are things you have to do in business in order to stay healthy. I think the issue that people have is that when companies are making hundreds of millions in profit, they can afford to not cut these jobs, but they're cutting the jobs as a way of making more money instead of just focusing on investing the money they have in the right places to make more money in the first place. You know, one of the things we heard Neil Druckmann say recently, that he thinks that he's nearly done with making AAA games, essentially. Like, he doesn't want to make big games anymore. And I do think maybe we're heading to this place where there's going to be less very big budget games. Because, you know, why? Like, Sony, for
It's
example,
tough to spend 5 to 6 years
yeah.
on one game
And
because
all,
then you get one game out during the console platform.
and also, not only that, but from a business perspective, it just isn't that sustainable. Especially if you're doing it on an exclusive scale, because if we look at Sony, they spend 200 plus million per a game on development nowadays. And it's like, if one of those games fails, just one, imagine if one game fails, that, I guarantee you, affects other projects in the portfolio. So it's kind of like, you know, the problem is the entire industry has this domino effect thing, where one thing that happens in one place affects somebody else somewhere else, and
Yeah.
it just, that's why it crumbles like this. You know, it's and it
Well,
does, yeah.
think about how much money that Warner Brothers spent on Rocksteady for
My
Suicide
God,
Squad to come out and
I
just
hate to
crash and
think,
burn.
how much money that game cost. I really do. I really do, because what did
It's
they?
doing less numbers right now on
Yeah,
Steam than Gotham Knights.
because what did they spend on that game? Something like 8 years. So, based on,
Well, yeah, it was 9 years since Arkham Knight, but I think there were rumors that they were working on something, and then for like 2 years or
it got
something, and then
shifted, right? Yeah, yeah, it got
something like that.
shifted. But it's I actually think that I'm gonna keep an eye on that team, because I still have a feeling that that entire team might just transfer to the new studio, which was set up by the founders of Rocksteady, because they set up a studio recently, the two guys that left. Um, and I have a feeling they might take that entire team with them.
Could be.
So we'll see, but hopefully we get some more positive news for gaming soon. But what other news do we have this week, Jeff?
Sure. Sega executives have implied that Super Mario Bros. Wonder was responsible for Sonic Superstars selling fewer copies than expected. The company just released its English translation of a Q&A session held earlier this month following its Q3 results presentations for its current fiscal year. Sega has stated that Sonic Superstars has sold fewer copies than it had been, excuse me, forecast. So during the Q&A, Sega Sammy Holders Executive President Makoto Takahashi and IR/SR Department Director Nobuyuki Yoshi were asked how they evaluated the game's performance. Although Sonic Superstars has generally been well received by those who have played it, the timing of the launch conceded with competing titles in the same genre and it has been short of the initial forecast. The strategic expansion of Sonic IP is progressing well, and we will continue to work to increase repeat sales of the title. By citing competing titles in the same genre as a major reason, Sega has essentially confirmed that releasing Sonic Superstars 3 days before Super Mario Bros. Wonder has had an impact on its sales. Although it doesn't specifically name Nintendo's title, the only other notable platformers released in October and November were SpongeBob SquarePants: The Cosmic Shake and DreamWorks Trolls Remix Rescue, suggesting that Sonic's main rival affected the game's sales most. Now I've
No,
played.
no, like, like, come on, like, there's a reason that people look at release schedules. There's a reason that years ago, when Red Dead Redemption 2 got its release date, God of
Yeah,
War moved out of the way, and other things moved out of the way, because
yeah,
you have to be aware that if you release a game, so to be fair, if you release any game next to a Mario game of any kind, that
yeah.
Mario game is going to affect your sales. I can pretty much guarantee you. You don't need to be an expert to figure that stuff out. Like,
Like I played a little bit of Sonic Superstars because I got like the game for Christmas. I just haven't had time to kind of devote to it. Um, and it's okay. Like I think it's fine. It's got some weird issues, especially when you play like local multiplayer with how it doesn't know how to follow the camera and all that kind of stuff. But like I don't think it's a bad game. But I think releasing it like yeah, like 3 days before the next big Mario game
yeah,
is
it's
very dumb.
almost like when there's that running joke in the industry and among gamers that when a Horizon game from Gorilla releases, they always get destroyed by some other big game within a number of days, and it's just like,
Yeah.
but that's why you need, like, I know that you're not always going to be aware what everybody's doing and things like that, and you don't know exact dates and all that sort of stuff, but and I know that it's not that easy to always move a date. Like, moving a date is actually harder than people think it is.
Especially if you have marketing stuff tied up in certain things like Halo did with Doritos or whatever.
Yeah.
You
So
know, like they delayed the game a whole year and we still had Halo Infinite
yeah.
Dorito bags.
So moving a date is really hard in some cases. But I you could have moved that like a week and it would have made a difference. Like it's
Well, I think honestly they should have just released it like pretty much a month later,
yeah,
but for $20 less than what they were charging.
interesting,
Because
interesting.
it was a full priced title. Like if it had been a more budget title, it would have
Yeah.
done so much better.
I will speak about a game later on that I've played a bit of that I think, if it was a slightly different price, would actually be a much more successful game than it is being currently. Um, but we'll get to that. Do we have any more news to speak about before we talk about what we've been playing, Jeff?
Yeah, I've got two or three. Well, we'll see how here. Let me see what we've got here. Deck Nine, the studio behind Life is Strange, Before the Storm, Life is Strange: True Colors, and the Telltale series The Expanse, has laid off a fifth of its staff. A statement on the studio's official Twitter account confirmed the cuts, citing the condition of the games industry as the reason. Like many others in the games industry right now, Deck Nine has been affected by games industry worsening marketing by the game industry's worsening market conditions. Today, we made the difficult decision to lay off 20% of our staff. These people are amazing, talented, and awesome developers. They have made a huge impact during our time at Deck Nine Games, and we did not take this decision lightly. Please hire these people if you can. They're amazing. Shortly before the official statement was made, narrative designer Elizabeth Ballo confirmed that she had been laid off, adding that affected staff were locked out of their work email before seemingly being allowed to access it again. They just gave a big speech about giving us time to say goodbye, get materials we needed, etc., she wrote, and then immediately locked us out of our work email. We are all getting 2 weeks of severance, including people who have worked at the studio for 7+ years. She then added, update, they unlocked the work email. I think they got immediate pushback for doing the thing that they gave us a speech said that they were not going to do. And I will continue into this one since it's the same basic thing. Until Dawn and Quarry developer Supermassive is reportedly set to lay off around 90 employees, or nearly a third of its staff. That's according to Bloomberg, which claims that the UK studio has informed around 150 staff members that they are at the risk of redundancy. The studio, which is owned by Nordisk Games, is comprised of more than 300 staff. In a statement published on its social media channels, Supermassive confirmed it has entered into a period of consultation as required by UK law, which would result in job losses. It's no secret that the games industry is currently facing significant challenges, and unfortunately, we aren't immune to this. After much deliberation and with deep regret, we are therefore undertaking a reorganization of Supermassive Games. As a result, we are entering into a period of consultation, which we will anticipate will result in the loss of some of our colleagues. This is not a decision has been taken lightly, with many efforts made to avoid this outcome. We are all too aware of how unsettling and difficult this process is going to be for all of our employees, and we will be working closely with all those involved to ensure the process is conducted as respectfully and compassionately as possible. We are committed to focusing our efforts on our core strengths and upcoming titles to ensure the continued sustainability of the company. Um, yes, I mean, you have Deck 9 and um,
Supermassive. I want to.
Superman.
I want to go back for a second to the Deck 9 situation because, on one hand, I sort of like how they handled a certain aspect of this, being the official announcement and how they sort of said, they were very upfront about the fact that at the end of the day, industry conditions meant that they had to do this. They also said these people are amazing, hire them if you can, which is something we don't see studios do when they cut jobs, generally speaking. But then it's weird to lock people out of their emails so that they can't even communicate with people. I understand it from some perspective because you
Yeah, like
don't.
security, like you have a disgruntled employee essentially just like leaking a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, so I do understand that, but there had to be some sort of way. Like, and then the other, for me, the more important part of it is the fact that people who've worked there for 7+ years are only getting 2 weeks worth of severance pay. Like, that's not good enough. That is not good
Yeah,
enough.
I was at Best Buy for 11 years and I got 3 months.
That's what I mean. It's like if they had come out and said, "Oh yeah, everybody's getting 2-3 months worth of pay," then I'd be like, "Okay, fair enough. That's actually pretty good." But 2 weeks for people that have been there for years and in some cases potentially dedicated their entire careers so far to that company. Like, I guarantee you that there are people there that have been cut whose first job was at that company and they've been there for years. Like that, and that happens in every company, don't get me wrong. But 2 weeks worth of pay, like, that is not good enough. It really isn't.
Not for 7+ years. No, definitely not. And like, again, you get like their statements and all that kind of stuff. It's it's good with how they had handled it instead of like Andrew Wilson going like, and we will continue to
Yeah.
delight
It
audiences with our
actually
blah
had,
blah blah.
put it this way, it actually had some humanity to it, which
Yeah,
I
it
spoke
didn't
about
feel like
earlier.
PR speak of where they're like, oh, which template should I pick today?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Um, and then obviously, yeah, cuts at Supermassive. That's a shame. I am a big fan of that studio. I think that they do, even though, okay, you can make an argument that their games aren't the best. What I appreciate about them is they do something different, and they do
and
something that
they're
nobody
actually
else really
supporting the
does.
PlayStation VR too,
Mm.
unlike Sony.
Yeah. So, that's a real shame. I think that's all of our news, isn't it, Jeff? Do we have anything else here?
I mean, there's some other little things and stuff like that that we'll touch on here. So Larian Studios has confirmed that it's working on official cross-platform mod support for Baldur's Gate
Ah,
3, which
yes.
will be huge because again, the mod community on PC is fantastic. So bringing that stuff to consoles is going to be
Yeah.
very, very cool.
Yeah. And talking about
And last,
cross-platform support, there is obviously
yes, yes,
Remnant 2 that recently had the announcement that cross-platform play is either available now or coming very shortly, and
yeah.
that is amazing to me because I have people who've been playing that on PC that want to play it, and we just haven't been able to. So that's going to be fun to kind of return to that game and play more of it because it's a great game. So if you haven't checked it out, go and check it out.
And the last little story is Riot's League of Legends fighting game, which was previously referred to as Project L, is now officially titled 2XKO, or as Maximilian Dude was saying, like 2000 kisses and hugs. He goes, that's a weird title for a fighting game. Um, so in an update on Thursday, the studio has also confirmed that it's targeting a 2025 launch window on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and PC. Now, I've seen lots of Maximilian Dudes like gameplay on this and stuff like that. It's a 2v2 type of fighter where like you actually have two people on one side as
Yes.
opposed to like the tag team stuff. It looks fantastic. It looks absolutely gorgeous. And they've really been playtesting this stuff with the right people to get the right response. But it is a weird
Yes.
name. Like I understand what they're doing with it because it's two times the KO because you have two on two.
Yes.
Um, I kind of wish it would have been almost like League of Legends Knockout or something like that, like something to kind of honor the name
Yeah.
of League of Legends.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is. I get what they're doing with the name, but there are better names that I could have come up with in 30 seconds. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's a shame. But all good news, and that looks good. At least we ended on something positive, I guess. We will have one of
Well,
these days, one of these weeks, we will have an episode where every single piece of news is positive. I'm sure of it.
did you hear that two games on Steam that are apparently from the same developer tried to disguise themselves
I
as
saw this
Helldivers 2?
earlier. That's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw this earlier.
And Multiverses might be coming back soon based on a leak from Burger King.
Oh, really? Wow, okay.
Apparently, it's some Burger King toys or something like that, or Multiverses themed.
Oh,
So
wow.
it implies that Warner Brothers is about to bring that game back.
Nice. Okay, okay. Well, that's
We'll
going
see
to
how
be
that
interesting
goes.
to see. For
But
now, let's talk about what we've been playing because it has been a long while. It's been a few weeks. I'm going to go first because I know I've been playing less than you, given that for about 10 days I literally couldn't play anything. Um so I have been playing. There's one game I can't talk about yet. But you will see a review of that at some point. And then there's three games that I have been playing. So I'll tackle the easy one first. I'm still playing Infinite Wealth. That review is coming. I know I sort of promised it to people. And if I hadn't have been ill, it would have been here by now. Because I'm literally in the final chapter of the game. So that review is coming at some point in the near future. And then other than that, I've played two other games. So the first one I want to speak about is Balatro, which you may have heard of if you've been on social media at any point in the last week or so. It's basically a poker based deck building roguelike game and it's one of the best deck building roguelikes I've ever played. It's made by a solo developer. It's published by PlayStack, and shout out to PlayStack. They provided me the code. So, take what I say about the game with that in mind. But honestly, it's a fantastic game because it's so simple in the sense of you don't even need to know about poker because it will tell you what the hands are and stuff. But what you're effectively doing is you're playing in rounds against three, they call them blinds, but they're basically bosses, right? You have small blind, big blind, and then boss blind. And as you play these rounds, you have a certain score that you need to meet by combining different poker hands. And different poker hands are worth different amounts of chips with a multiplier attached to them. But the twist and what makes it interesting is you can get Joker cards, and these Joker cards have different buffs. So one of them can be like every even numbered card you play adds a 1.5 times multiplier to the stack. So if you play a hand with 4 even cards in it, you then get a really high multiplier to score a really high amount of chips. And you also get power cards of sorts. You can have like tarot cards, which are they will do different one-time effect kind of things. So it can be like add a 30 times multiplier to your next hand played or something like that. But you can also get the cards I enjoy most are the celestial cards, which basically upgrade your poker hands. So they level up your poker hands to give the base a higher multiplier and a higher chip count before you even interact with your Joker cards. And as you play each one of these rounds, you're earning money. You're earning money to use in the store to basically buy more cards to increase your deck and increase your possibilities of good things, right? You can only have up to 5 Jokers at any one time, and I'm not sure how many there are, but I've used at least 15 different Jokers now. And they all do different things. Like one of them will be like every heart card you play has a 2 times multiplier attached. Or one of them, if you're really lucky, you might get every hand has a 20 times multiplier, or something like that. So you can have loads and loads of different things. And there's also different...
Give me 1 second.
That's okay.
Just keep going.
There's also different versions of these cards, which are like shiny cards, and they have additional buffs on them. And it's, like I said, it's strange because it's a really basic game, but when you add in those layers of the Jokers and the different power cards and aspects like that, it becomes something that's really deep and actually really engaging, because you have to think 6 or 7 moves ahead, right? Because one of the things you can do while playing is you can discard and throw away certain cards from your hand. So but you only have a certain number of times you can discard cards, right? So say that I've got 10 cards in my hand, and I don't want to use 5 of them. I can select 5 of those cards and press discard, but I might only have 3 discard moves per round. And the problem you have is that sometimes your boss and each time you clear a boss, the level of chips you have to reach in the next round basically becomes higher, and then you finish a run by getting up to level 8 and beating that level 8, and I still haven't done that yet because it's difficult.
Mm.
I've got up to like level 6, and but
Okay.
some of these bosses can be like, because the actual big boss of each round, so you'll do 3 rounds, and one thing I didn't mention as well is the small and big blind, which are the first 2 that you'll face in each round. You can actually skip those rounds for additional items and things like that sometimes, but it's not always a good thing to do because you
Mm.
might need the money to buy items from the shop. And if you skip the round, you don't get their money if you beat them, right? Because you've skipped them entirely. So there's that tactical element to it. But sometimes you can get to these big bosses and it can say something like, all previously played cards in a round are now debuffed, which basically
Mm.
means you can still use them to create a hand if needed,
Yeah,
but they
but their
do
effects won't
but
be.
they do not count towards the score of the hand, or
Okay.
there's certain, or if it's like, say it's a heart card and I've got that joker that says all heart cards played will give me a 2 times multiplier, right? If it's a heart card that I've previously played and I have that all previously played cards are debuffed boss to face, those debuffed cards will not give me that additional multiplier, even though the Joker says that they should, because I've used them previously. And then you can get like, one of the bosses is like, you have to play 5 cards, otherwise your hand is ineligible. So you end up
Mm.
wasting cards that you might not want to use just so you can play hands, and that can really cause issues at times. But honestly, like, I've never seen. It's gonna sound like a crazy comparison, but it almost feels like Hades, the card game. Like that feels like what I'm playing, because it's just got so much depth to it that doesn't initially appear, and it's not until you kind of scratch below the surface and start to figure out what's going on, because it's like you can even start with, eventually you unlock different packs of cards and they
Yeah.
will give you a different buff to start with. So for example, one of the packs of cards might give you an additional hand to play per round, or one of them might give you an additional discard, right? But then you also have the different difficulty levels which you unlock, and I haven't even beat the most basic difficulty level once yet. So it's really interesting. And the first time I played it, to put it in perspective, the first time I played it, I put it on and I thought, I'm going to play it for a quick sort of 45 minutes, hour. And then literally it was 4.5 hours later. Like, when you see people online saying, like, I want to play this game or I want to buy this game, but I'm not going to because it's going to kill my productivity, I can see how that happens, because it is so engaging and so addictive isn't even the right word, but it definitely plays on that just one more run kind of mentality that we all have in the back of our minds. The other thing that I've played a little bit of before we get to what you've played, Jeff, is some Skull and Bones, which I've played for about 6 hours now. I've been
Sure, we
playing.
can. We'll share talk this about this because I will go back to like a dragon as well too.
Yes.
But yeah, go Skull and
Um.
Bones. Yeah.
So I actually am pleasantly quite surprised by it. And this is the game that I was talking about, where I think that if this game was a different price point, I actually think we'd see it doing very well right now.
It hasn't even
Because,
hit 1 million players yet, and that includes the people that are in the trial.
yeah, and it's a shame, because I do actually think there's a decent game there. Like, admittedly, I am playing it in co-op with my brother, who's played about 40 hours of the game before I even started playing, so he has been
Yeah.
helping me. But it offers, if you're someone who enjoys Sea of Thieves, this offers something very different in the sense of this is a more combat focused game. You know, it's about the ship combat. Yes, you pick up your missions at outposts and you're going to different islands and that kind of thing. But there is what I prefer about this game compared to Sea of Thieves is this game actually has a sense of progression because you can get better
Yeah, I mean,
ships, you can get
the
better weapons, all that kind of
yeah,
thing.
I
So
mean,
it feels like you're achieving something.
yeah, like it's got that. Like the biggest issue that I have with, well, one of the biggest issues I have with Skull and Bones is the fact that you are not a pirate ever. You are a boat. Like you can run around as your pirate and talk to people, but you never do pirate
No.
things. So
Other
when
than
you're
maybe
sailing around,
other than maybe dig up one bit of treasure. Have you like you'll dig up a treasure chest here and there, but that's
yeah.
about it.
But I mean, like you're essentially just playing as the boat.
Yeah.
So on Sea of Thieves, you're playing as the pirate. So you're like actually spinning the wheel,
Mhm.
and you know, you'll get cannon barraged, and then have to go down and control the water and all that kind of stuff. So like,
Yes. Yeah.
it gives you more to do in the moment to moment.
Yeah.
But I mean, like the ship combat that Skull and Bones has is its best element. I mean, it is fun to take part in battles, especially on like rocky seas and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So like
And
it has those
the
moments.
first time I went through a storm as well, it actually blew my mind. And then you get like these rogue waves, and like all of that stuff is really good. I do agree, even from being early on in the game. I I wish I could combine Sea of Thieves with this video game because so much of what this game does I like, but I wish that, for example, me and my brother are playing, right? I wish that we could just be on the same ship and he could navigate for me or he would have to repair the ship and things like that because like you said, the problem with how the game is structured right now is yeah, you have your pirate, but your pirate doesn't even really need to be there
And
because the
you
game is
can't
about the
like,
ship.
yeah, and you can't board ships because then it would leave your ship vulnerable to like other things and stuff like that. So I get why they didn't do that, but like it's just got these little moments where like one, like there's no combat whatsoever. So like you're on these islands that feel just like copy and pasted menus that you're just running around in.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And like the sad thing is that 11 years ago with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, that game was cheaper and did way more
Mhm.
than what is here. Like in that game you felt like a pirate.
I think that one thing I will say about this game, even from being only 6 hours in, is you can tell that this game has gone through significant changes over the course of development because it felt like, and in the combat and certain elements of it, it does feel very much like they wanted to make a Black Flag, which was just a pirate game to start with, and then they kind of pivoted towards this more live service type thing. And
Yeah, because like the story is almost
I
non-existent
I
in Skull
do
and Bones.
wonder, how this game would have been received because I think there is an element of this game just took too long, and I do wonder how this game would have been received if it had come out, say, 5 years ago, for example.
And it's not even that polished either. Because like there's tons of like pop up on the islands and stuff. You'll see trees and shadows all forming as you're sailing close to them. The character models look pulled from the first year of Xbox One games.
Yes, yeah.
Like the character models look absolutely bad.
Yeah,
And they don't
and
animate
that's even
near
in
as good
comparison to
as
other like that's even in comparison to other newer Ubisoft games where they have actually improved their character models. um, yeah, this is this those
the thing is like it's an okay game.
that I don't
Like
know. Did you
it
do
is
a review of this one, Jeff? I can't remember because
yeah,
I would say that based on my 6 hours so far, I couldn't rate this higher than a 6.5. But but I still, there is that element of I am
That's what I'm at.
enjoying it.
6.5, decent.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Because yeah, that's kind of where I would put it, because I do think the combat, as you mentioned, is a massive highlight. I think it's really good, and I know you didn't get to play any co-op during your review time with it because we had planned to, and then I got ill, unfortunately. Um, but the co-op is fun. Like, it's really fun. The one thing I will say is that initially connecting, and to be fair, since we haven't had as much of an issue, but when I initially tried to connect with my brother after doing all the tutorials and things like that, no word of a lie, it took us about 10 attempts just to
Hmm.
connect to each other. Once we were in,
Well,
it was fine. It
I
was.
was uh, I was checking some of the co-op features and stuff like that for the review, and someone had mentioned that just because you bring someone into co-op doesn't mean that they join your activity. So, like for example, if you go and do a PvP battle
Yeah.
and your partner joins you, they're invincible because they're not part of the activity, but they
Interesting.
can
I hadn't
still
realized that.
attack other players. So like yeah, so like there's some issues like
Yeah, there is.
that game needs a lot of
What
work.
I will say though is this game does very much remind me of Sea of Thieves in the sense that I think there is a platform to build on here. To Ubisoft's credit, I do think there's a decent platform to build a very good game on over the next few years. If they can add the right things to it, and if they can do certain things, this will become something very interesting. And look, I think that that's part of the reason that you see Sea of Thieves in a few months' time coming to PlayStation, right? Because at the end of the day, there is an appetite for this pirate ship combat kind of game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've enjoyed what I've played of that. I will play more in co-op. Um, However, I would say that based on what I've played, it's not good enough for me to recommend at full price.
No.
However, if you can get it at like 40 to 50% off, then it probably is worth your time if you have any
Or at
sort
least
of
waiting
interest
for
in the
like
game.
some like extremely massive
Yeah.
content updates because you can also I think get it through Ubisoft Plus.
You can, yes, you
Um,
can.
yeah, and there's a trial right now to play like 8 hours or something of it.
Yeah. So Jeff, speak to me because you have been playing or you've at least started playing Infinite Wealth, which I'm obviously nearly
Yeah,
all the way through now. Um, let's not talk too heavily about story spoilers and things, just
sure.
because we are gonna have a spoiler cast. I've spoken to our friend MBZ, and he's actually finished the game a few days ago. So once Jeff finishes the game, we will have a spoiler cast in the coming weeks. But talk to me about what you're thinking about the game generally.
Yeah, so like I've just unlocked Dodonka Island. Like I'm a bit into it. Like I've had my first stay of guests and stuff, and
Nice,
I'm on my
nice.
second stay and stuff like that. I don't think I'm gonna stick with Dodonko Island at all. I think I'm gonna do a little bit more and then just completely
Yeah,
abandon it.
you definitely don't
Um,
have to. You don't, and
yeah.
that's worth bearing in mind for people. There is a part of the
But it
story.
becomes a sub story
Yeah.
after,
So
essentially.
there is a part of the story where it makes you engage with the Dondoko Island stuff, but
Yeah.
once you've done the first little bit of that mode, it gives you the option to then basically go back to the main story if you so choose. I
Yeah.
unfortunately got roped in and ended up playing like 15 to 20 hours of that mode and maxed it out, but that was more because it's one of the best ways to make money in the game, or at least early on, it's one of the best ways to make
Yeah.
money in the
I
game.
kind of wish the combat in that particular mode was better.
Yeah.
It feels like really kind of
Stiff.
slapdash. Yeah.
Stiff. It's very
And
stiff.
like yeah, and I hate how he just goes like on like one swing. So when you're like trying to like smash garbage and all that kind of stuff, it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
like it's just
However,
annoying.
I don't know about you, but I personally appreciate the fact that it's basically a fully fledged mode. Like, if you wanted to,
Oh, it's a fully fledged Animal Crossing game.
you could
I
play
mean,
that.
hell,
You
even
could
the
play that as an individual game. Like, you just
yeah,
you
even the
can.
guy is dressed as Tom Nook. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, no, it's a decent little mode. The game itself is fine. Like I am quite enjoying it. I like the cast here way better than the first Like a Dragon game. Um, and especially with how they join your group.
yes, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I thought you'd like
like
that.
it's kind of hilarious how like everybody kind of joins and how they've kind of integrated themselves around Ichiban. I will say so far, I think I'm in chapter 6 or whatever, and honestly, um, Kiryu feels like such a second-class citizen to this whole thing.
Yeah,
I don't feel his
he.
arc so far has been
Oh,
good at all.
it's what I will say. I've obviously played more since we last
Yeah,
spoke, and it is coming, and it's coming heavy. Like later in
yeah,
the game,
yeah.
they
It's I don't know, like they kind of explain something with Kiryu, and then they show this little story where I'm like, well, that case seems kind of dumb. Like especially how it happened.
yeah.
It just feels like they're like, oh,
It,
he burned his face off in a McDonald's air
it's
fryer. Like,
almost like, without
you know,
spoiling it, it's almost like they wanted to add extra stakes to Kiryu's side of the story, and they
I just
kind
wish
of
those stakes
shoehorned a
came
way in to
under.
do it.
Yeah, the idea feels very shoehorned.
Yeah.
And they also don't explain it with one character, and they just start talking about it casually right in front of them
Yeah.
without explaining anything at all. Like again, like I think the thing that hurts this game the most for me at least
hmm
is they spend a little too much time in the previous location before you get to Hawaii. It just felt a
Interesting.
little long.
Yeah, so I would
Um,
agree actually. Those thinking back, one of the points I'm going to make in my review is that those initial chapters definitely have a pacing issue, and a
yeah,
similar thing does happen slightly later on in the game, but it's not quite as bad later on in the
yeah.
game.
Like again, like it is. I think it's fantastic. I think there's some points in the story where they're like, "Oh, we have to do this. This is super important." And then there'll be a small little detour, and then it'll just start getting distraction, and then back on it.
Yeah,
It feels like there's a lot of filler built around these big
yeah.
moments. Um,
Do you know what the weirdest thing is though? Is that yes, there is a lot of filler in this game, but the weird thing is, at least for the amount of it I've engaged in, none of it seems bad. Like,
no, like yeah, like there's like little parts where I'm a little
like
inconsistent with some stuff.
I talked
Like some of
before
the sub
about
stories are okay.
I talked before about one of the sub stories I did where I used nappies to make snow for for a lady basically, and I will spoil this sub story now because it's a sub story of like 1 out of 50 in the entire game. um and basically, yeah, the guys in the previous game that you may have encountered who are a Yakuza family that go around in nappies, they turn up in Hawaii and they
Okay.
help you to help this old man who basically his wife is dying and she wanted to see snow again because
Oh,
they
I got to that. You go there and he grabs you. Give me all your ice, and he throws it up, and it just collapses on him. And he's like,
yeah,
"No, that's
yeah.
not right."
So that
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that story goes further along, and it's one of the things I praise this game for, but I think can be off-putting for some people, is they do this weird thing where and they balance it really well in my opinion, is the main story has this super serious kind of tone, and then they have the funny, edgy comedy side to it, and then the side content is almost like the exact opposite, where they lead with the funny comedy stuff, and then they have a serious undertone. And
yeah.
that side quest is exactly that. Like when you first see the guy with the ice, you're like, "What the hell is going on?" You know what I mean? and then like I said, it becomes this much bigger thing, and you end up using nappies to make snow for the lady. Essentially, there's
Yeah.
more to
And
it
there's
than
like
that, but
I did the one sub story where like, oh God, it is snowing outside. Holy hell, is it coming down? Like I'm not even able to see my
we were
car, Tom.
just talking about snow as well. Maybe they heard us.
Oh my God, it's coming down, fucking with nappies and everything. No, the one sub story that I did a little bit ago was there's like a guy that's trying to find his hotel, and he ends up getting like scammed by like this like Hawaiian lady, and
Okay,
then
yeah,
like how that story like kind of like comes to a conclusion.
and
There's that.
it's just. I think that one of going back to one of the issues with the game, because you mentioned about pacing, I actually think that one of the issues in that first sort of 5 or 6 chapters is not only the pacing of the main story, but it's also the fact that because there's so much in this game, it feels like you're in a tutorial until you get to like chapter 6, because they're always introducing new things. Like you'll randomly, like you'll be like in the middle of a main quest. Oh yeah, we gotta get to this place, and you'll run down the street, and it'll just automatically like introduce you to a guy with a Segway. That, and I get it because it's part of the game mechanics, so
Or
you
like
have to
when
have
you
that
go
thing.
to that orphanage and they're like, "Oh, well, I guess we hit a bust." They're like, "Well, we're gonna go out and patrol." It's like, "We can help you." And then there's like 2 hours of just nothing but like, "Don't go to this area," and then you go to that area, and then there's just like this
Yeah.
dungeon crawling
So
thing.
so it's
And
and that's what I mean. So it's like I get it because they're using inventive ways to tutorialize things, and they're trying to connect the tutorials to the
yeah,
main story. But the problem is doing it that way hurts the pacing. If they just had it that the optional stuff was optional and then it tutorializes it as and when you come to it, that would probably be a better way of doing things. Other than
yeah,
that though, I have very little issue with the game. I know that obviously Kiryu in combat for you has felt a little bit
yeah. I changed his
shortchanged.
job to like the surfboarding thing, so he at least had like a weapon that I could upgrade.
Okay, that's
I
interesting.
kind of wish that he had like knuckle dusters or something that you could upgrade because he
I
always felt
think
weak.
I think the reason he doesn't is because if you stick with his original job,
Yeah,
over time he actually does become very overpowered. Like he is now my most powerful, because you get to the point where you can basically use one of his skills to turn the game into a real-time combat game. He
yeah,
becomes super overpowered. Like, I'll clear an entire room of enemies with his one skill in like 10 seconds. Do you know what I mean? But the problem is, because of what his entire, so each character has their own unique job for people that are
yeah,
unfamiliar, right? So Ichiban has the hero job, which is kind of like this well balanced job between being able to heal people and do different attacks and things like that. I always leave him on the hero job because I think it is a good one, and I also like the weapons that he can get there. We've got a new character, Tomizawa, who is, I think his job is cabbie, and
yeah,
that's quite interesting. Um, and it's just like, so they all have their own unique job, and obviously they have specific skills connected with that job. The problem with Kiryu is, in a turn, it's a turn-based game, and his specific job isn't really around using skills until you get much later into the game where he really powers up. um you it's not really around using skills, it's around changing between his three fighting styles to use basic attacks to your best advantage. So for example, but
yeah,
the problem I've found with that is like one of his fighting styles, and I forget the name of each one, so please forgive me. But one allows him to pick up weapons in the environment and do like heat action moves in certain situations, and that can be quite powerful against individual enemies. Another one of the fighting styles allows him to basically pick up enemies and throw them around, and that's good for
Yeah,
guard
that's the yellow
breaking.
one.
That's the yellow one. And then the one I actually use most is the red one of his, because something I didn't realize about that skill initially is it actually allows him to attack twice in a row.
That's the blue one.
No, it's the red one. The blue one is the one that allows you to pick up weapons and
Wait,
things.
oh, okay. Well, it's the one that's on the left-hand side.
Yeah, the red one,
Yeah.
left hand side one.
Okay.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
I actually use that quite consistently now because it basically gives you an extra turn as long as you're using only the basic attack. Um, but it's useful to have, right?
Yeah.
However, as Jeff has said, you do get to a point in the game where you can even change Kiryu's job. So, if you're not enjoying his base
Yeah, I want
job,
to unlock the. It looks like a samurai or something.
nice, yeah, samurai, yeah.
Yeah. But
there's
no,
there's
like
there's quite a few jobs in this game. I don't remember exactly how many were in the last one, but there's
yeah.
definitely more in this game. Like,
Yeah, there's two of them that are part of a DLC thing, like football player and
yeah,
tennis champ or something.
yeah.
But no, I have Ichiban is the fire dancer or whatever,
Oh, nice. Okay.
and then I have the girl is the hula dancer.
I do. Yeah, I have Chitose as the hula dancer as well. Yes.
Yeah. I still
Um.
have what's his name is the cabbie though. I haven't changed him off of
Yeah,
that.
I like the cabbie job. The
Yeah.
cabbie's a good one.
I think
Uh,
like my biggest issue with the game though
hmm,
is still that you either walk too slow or you sprint way too fast.
yeah. I think that's
So
why the
like
I
trying to
think that's why the segway's there, right? I think that was their plan to
yeah,
try
no,
and.
like I just want a medium run
I
when I'm
agree. I
going
agree.
through
And
areas.
to be
Because I get
fair,
stuck on things and the characters are like, oh, sorry.
that's not an issue that's unique to this specific game. That has been in
No.
this series of games for a really long
Yeah.
time.
Like that's my biggest issue is like maneuvering around the world is such a
The amount of
it's such
times
a
I'll get
chore.
like caught on a wall or whatever.
Yeah, like it's really bad for that end of it. But like again, like the game is super fun. Like the character moments
Yeah.
are really good. Like it is really good.
Like I won't tell you my score for the game yet, but all I'll say is it's going to be on the higher end. Um
Yeah.
because put it this way, if you played Like a Dragon, and I think Jeff would probably even agree with this even at this point, if you played the first Like a Dragon, this game only improves on that stuff. Like the ability to move around in combat, even to line up different attacks and things, makes such a significant difference. Not to mention
Yeah.
the fact that enemies now won't just randomly trip you up and block your attacks. Like that's gone away as well. So they learned a lot of lessons from that first game that they've kind of implemented here, and it's still
Yeah.
not perfect. But I do think that this franchise, if it continues on this trajectory, is on its way to becoming one of the better turn-based video games is available. Like, it's
Yeah, it's
really
really good
good.
so far. And the mini games are fine as well too. I
Yes,
think the dating thing is a little weird.
that is
Like you kind of
weird.
have to you have to rig your profile to really get in there as well too.
Yeah,
So you kind of
that
have to
is
have
that
Ichiban like
is weird.
lie
And then
that
they've
song.
obviously got Crazy Eats, which is the Crazy Taxi inspired.
Well, I would have had the date, but that stupid emoji thing that like
Oh,
it's
it
like a
got
wheel,
you. Oh,
and you're like, I was doing good, like I was doing absolutely fantastic. I had like all her likes and stuff. I was like right at the end, whatever. And then it's kind of like, oh, what do you think? And he's like,
and it
that's
stopped
a
on
no. And I'm
bad.
like,
Yeah,
oh my God. And I'm like, fuck off. But
that's
no, like
funny.
it is excellent. Even the Donko Island
Yeah.
stuff that I'm not loving is still very, very
Have you
well
have
done.
you encountered any of the Sujimon stuff yet?
Oh yeah, yeah, I did the initial Sujimon tournament thing and stuff like that, and um,
It's
I've been
basically Pokemon, right?
collecting and stuff. Yeah, I haven't really I haven't invested too much into it because again, like I just want to kind of get through the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like if the sub stories and stuff for me right now, if a sub story starts and I'm sitting here, I'm like the one where you go and there's that stand-up comic that's started the coffee shop.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
If a sub story for me is not hitting right away, I'm generally skipping the cutscene.
Yeah. I can
Um,
understand that. I can
because I
understand
just
that.
want to get through the main story
Yeah.
as well too.
One thing I will say as well, just so people are clear, um, I know that with the previous game there were some kind of complaints over how it randomly became very grindy in the middle of the game. And one of the things I want to say so that people are aware is that this game does a much better job. And that's not to say that it's not grindy, there's still a grindy element to it. Like at the end of the day, it's a turn based RPG. You have to expect some element of grind because that's kind of how these games are designed. But one thing this game does very well, and I don't know if you've encountered it yet, Jeff. I think you
Mm.
probably have. But when you get to certain story points, it will come up and it will tell you, do you want to proceed? The recommended level is X, Y, or Z, and the recommended level for your equipment is a certain amount of stars.
Yeah, I got that when I was heading into that kind of dangerous homeless section and stuff like that,
Okay, so
where
yeah,
where
so
you
and
encounter
I actually
certain
found that
celebrity.
quite helpful because you'll know before you go into something, right? Whereas with the previous game, I think the issue that a lot of people had was you would just main the main story and yeah, it would say to you, "Are you sure you're ready to do this kind of thing?" But because it gave you no indication about what level you needed to be, you'd sometimes start a story section in the previous game and then you'd be coming up against enemies that were like 10 levels higher than you and it would cause issues. With this, I do think because they notify you of a recommended level beforehand, it
Yeah.
does a very good job of kind of avoiding that. And one thing I'd say, my bit of advice to people, is that you can be like a couple of levels lower than that recommended level is manageable. If you're like 10 levels lower, then you're going to have an issue. But if you're two
Yeah.
or three levels lower, it shouldn't be too much of an issue because yeah, I'm in the final chapter right now and I'm probably about 2 levels lower than I should be, but I am getting through it. So, yeah, I very much enjoy it. I still think it's one of the better games to release this year so far. And I look forward to writing a review because I feel like this might be one of my longer reviews. Um, so look out for that in the coming future, which shouldn't be too far away, hopefully. What else have you been playing, Jeff?
Yeah, so I've got three things here. So we'll kind of go from the earlier, from when we were last podcasting to kind of now. So I'll go in order. So I got ended up getting sent review code from Focus Home Entertainment for Banishers: Ghosts of New Eden. This is the next game from the team that made Vampire through Don't Nod. It's the exact same team, and they have kind of almost kind of delivered a very similar game. We are dealing with essentially a kind of a large world of characters and stuff like that that are embraced around kind of a supernatural thing. So instead of vampires, we have ghosts. And so basically, you play as a couple that have been summoned to an island from a friend of theirs to essentially solve a curse. There's like a mystery essentially afoot. So you have Red McWraith and Agwart. I can't remember her name. Um, it's Obarte or something. Antea Duarte and Red McWraith. And you basically kind of go to New Eden. So it's like kind of settlement and stuff like that. And you kind of encounter the curse. And if you've paid attention to any of the marketing or even the cover of the game, you'll notice that I can't hear you. She is a ghost essentially. So you start the game as Anatea, and then through tragedy, essentially, you die, become a ghost, and then you become the companion character to Red McWraith, who is
Yeah.
then your main character. And
And also, I should quickly mention that I also have a code for the game, so thank you to Focus Home for that, because I actually got my own code separate from Jeff. I'm yet to play the game, but I have seen that opening section that you're talking about. So
but
yeah, I agree with you that if you're paying any attention, you that isn't a spoiler because you know what this game is
it's in
about.
all of the marketing. Every last bit of the marketing, they're like, here's how to like have Antea help you in combat as a ghost. Like every aspect of that game.
Yeah,
So like you play as Red McWraith, and he is someone who he has a lot of baggage. But the one thing that I like about this game is that they come into this whole thing as a couple. And as you play throughout the game, this predicament also places them on the trajectory of getting to know each other more and learning more about their past, because he doesn't know too much about her family. She doesn't know too much about his time at the war. And they kind of deal with all that stuff in very, very cool ways. Like sometimes there's parallels to certain missions and stuff that you'll do. Um, and the story in this game, like it's extremely well written. The story is very, very good. Um, and as you kind of progress through the game, you have two choices essentially that you can deal with Anatea's predicament, and that is you can help her ascend, which is the job of a banisher, or you can go against the job of a banisher and you can perform a ritual to resurrect her. And this is where the choices come into play, where if you take energy away from living souls, it'll power her. If you take the souls away from the ghosts and stuff like that, it kind of cleanses it, and it kind of empowers you as a banisher. So my biggest issue with that game is that very few of those missions, which are kind of called haunts, um, actually work out to be flexible for either outcome. Because there'll be some missions where, like, if you were to play this, like, the greater number of the haunts that you solve a certain way will dictate your ending. I did a complete genocide run where I killed every living person to bring her back. But the problem is most of those missions don't complement that. There'll be some where the ghost is just like a complete fucking dick. And you'll be like, I should be banishing you, but I'm like, no, I'm like, oh, you made a bad mistake on a shopping spree. You're dead. Like it just most of the missions, and even Antea will be like, I think it's clear that we should banish the ghost or whatever, and then you'll go like, all right, living person, you're dead. Like it's just those parts I feel don't complement that system that well. Um, but like it's again, like it is an extremely well written game. They do such an amazing job with the world building. The map is massive.
yeah.
Like it is an extensively big game. I think my playthrough is like 50 some hours.
Wow.
And like combat itself does get a little repetitive until you start unlocking more of the ghost abilities that Antea has.
Okay.
And then you start noticing that flexibility in
Interesting.
combat and kind of what they were intending to do. Um, there's not too many enemies. That's one issue that I have with it, is the variety for enemies is not great. Um, but like the boss encounters are super fun. I think the last boss is the least impressive of it, just in terms of mechanics.
That's always a shame when that happens. When you play like a good game that you're enjoying and then the last boss is kind of a little bit of a letdown. I feel like that happens
Well,
in a lot of games because they just
yeah, like
mechanically do weird things.
two of the bosses that are pretty cool is one where you're fighting through this almost like judicial system of like these ghosts that have taken on these authority figures and stuff, and you have to take down all three of them. There's like the judge, the jury, the executioner type of thing.
Nice,
And
nice.
that mission, that one's really fun. There's one where you fight this like larger than life kind of like being essentially that's like held captive, and every single time you shatter a chain, it takes Anatea into this portal, and then you have to like run around the room finding her through all these portals. And like those fights are really cool. And the last one is just basically like, oh, there's the boss. Just keep hitting them until their health bar's done. Like
Okay,
it
that's a shame.
it
That's a shame
yeah, like
to not
and
have
like
something unique, if you like, for that
yeah, and I
final
kind of
boss.
wish that one of the other characters would have interacted in that fight, considering it sounded like they were coming to New Eden with us. Um, like I believe they say like I'll see you in New Eden or something. So I was expecting them to show up during the fight and maybe do something to then, affect the battle. But
Yeah.
no, you just go through there. But the one thing with Banishers as well is this is kind of a Metroidvania. You get a lot of abilities through Anatea that allow you to progress through things like shattering walls or jumping gaps or all that kind of stuff. So you'll come up to an area early on and there'll be like roots blocking a bridge. And it's
Okay.
not until way later that you can shoot those roots and then drop the bridge.
Yeah.
So then you'll
That
return back to these areas.
that kind of makes me think of like God of War, because God of War had the routes that you could set on fire to get through to certain areas. So
Yeah.
I like when games do things like that, because it gives you a reason to go back and explore, especially in these bigger open
Yeah.
worlds.
I had like 63% map completion or something like that when I beat the game. But I
Nice.
did every haunt, every last one of them. Like there's one part where I'm like, okay, I think I'm getting it near the end. I think I'm almost done. Let's do this. And then I go into a whole new area and there's like 9 new haunts and I'm
That's
like, fuck
crazy.
my life. But no, it's excellent. That game is so good. This is the type of
And we
game
have a
that it
review up for it as well, right? So people can go and read that
yeah.
over on the site, because I recommend reading it, because yeah, Jeff put a lot of time into this game, and clearly by what you're saying you enjoyed it, Jeff. So
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it's not in my top 10 for the year.
oh,
Like
okay, okay. So
it is really, really good. Again, like just minor complaints. I just wish that the haunts had flexibility for each side being right in your choice, that
yeah.
there was some type of like moral, like was
So
it
I need to make
ambiguity?
sure that I play this one then.
Yeah, it's is absolutely excellent.
Uh,
Um,
and you've also
next
been
on my
playing a long awaited game, haven't you? Is that the next one?
yeah, I'll get to that shortly. I just want to do these in order. So I also bought, did not get a code for, so I also bought full price Suicide Squad Kill the
Oh
Justice
god,
League.
I forgot about this game.
Um, yeah, that was a waste of money. So Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is probably going to take my most disappointed game of the year.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, I think that's all
now,
we need to say, right?
yeah, like the thing is, there appears to be a very interesting game here. The stuff with the Suicide Squad is fantastic. I do wish, however, that it was Deathstroke and not Deadshot,
Yeah.
because Deadshot to me was always a boring character. He always felt like they couldn't get Deathstroke, so they went with Deadshot, and that feels like what they did here.
Yeah.
Deadshot is absolutely boring. His character has no personality whatsoever. Like he is the most boring character in that game. Everybody else, Captain Boomerang, Harley, and King Shark,
Mhm.
all fantastic. Like Tara Strong is back as Harley. She's got a lot of meat to dig into the role. Her voice acting is probably the best it's ever been as Harley. Um, and you have AEW's Samoa Joe as King Shark.
Yes.
He does a fantastic job, even though he is literally just trying to be Drax.
I mean,
He's a
that's
better
fine.
version of Drax. He's a better version of Drax. Um, but no, like the, the stuff with the Suicide Squad is fine. I think it is the best stuff in that game. I think their interactions with Amanda Waller and Lex Luthor are very good. There's some really decent moments, especially with Kingpin, or not Kingpin, Penguin, and their revamped take on Poison Ivy is a bit weird. I'm not a fan of what they did with Poison Ivy. I think that there's other characters. There's a character named Hero who, like, what a stupid name to give a person who has hero worship.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and he's like, "Oh God, it's like we're gonna do this. I'm so happy to be with you guys. Oh God, we're gonna have so much fun." Like, he is so freaking annoying. He's like that Disney character. Like, he just feels like a Disney character. Um, and then, like, again, like, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. Spoilers, it killed the Justice League.
Yeah.
It's in the title. And, like, the thing with that is none of the Justice League have any time to really shine here. They don't feel like villains. They feel like just things to progress through to get to the end game, because this game just bolts you for the finish line. Like it is ridiculous. Like, you get some decent moments with Flash and Wonder Woman. Like, those moments are really, really good. Superman's barely in the game. He has a couple scenes, and then you go right into the fight, and guess how you defeat Superman? You shoot him to death. Like, you shoot him to death. And, like, Batman's in your ear through the entire game, essentially. Like, you hear, you hack into a broadcast signal, and you're like, Harley Quinn's blah 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 blah. Like, you hear him talking about what you guys are doing and all this kind of stuff. And it's such a slap in the face to that character that they built up over 3 games, because, like, how he's taken out is just dumb as fuck.
I bet it is, yeah. I bet it is.
Like,
Oh,
it is so dumb. Like, at least with, like, the Flash death, like, Boomerang's like, I did it, I did it, oh my God, and then he
do
tries
you
to, like, do
know
a speech.
what upsets me most about this game? Is I would love to see what this game would have been if Rocksteady were just given the freedom to, if they had said, if WB had said to them, right, we want a Suicide Squad game, but make it however you like, and we're not gonna force anything upon you. Do it however you like, but it has to be a Suicide Squad game. I would have loved to have seen what this game could have been.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many fractal kind of branches of where that could have went. Like the live service stuff, like, where, like, oh, this bat has 34 attack and this bat has 36 attack, but the critical attack is lower, and like, that's what this game is. And,
Yeah.
like, there's stupid missions where, like, you can't damage enemies until you have, like, a damage multiplier, and you can only have a damage multiplier if you defeat these little tiny crawly things that are going around the map, and then sometimes those things won't show up.
That's silly. That is
um
really silly.
and, like, Metropolis is so fucking boring.
Hmm.
Like, there's no set pieces. There's not one. There's no, like, landmark that feels like a set piece. Everything feels like the same city block, just copy and pasted every fucking place you go. And, like, again, like, I just kind of wish that there were, like, more boss battles, because, like, all there is for boss battles basically is Flash, Green Lantern, Batman, Superman, and then one of 13 Brainiacs. And then when you defeat Brainiac, you get a credit because the other Brainiacs are part of the seasons that will probably never come.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, like, there's no ending to this game because, again, it's a live service game. There shouldn't be an ending. You need to keep going. Like, that's how that thing works. But you get these missions, like in the end game, where you go and do a mission and it gets you a currency, and then that currency you can spend to then join other end game missions to get, like, Bane gear.
Yeah.
So you have to keep grinding the same things that you've been doing through the entire game to earn the currency to then do the same things that you've been doing through the entire game to get better gear. And, like, the you get traversal abilities as well. Like, Harley uses a bat grapple and a bat drone. um Batman makes a funny comment, like, "Of course you'd use my gear, Bar Harley," and stuff like that. And um, Boomerang uses the Speed Force
Yeah.
to get around. Deadshot uses a boring rocket pack, but he's a boring character.
I will say that of everything I've seen of this game, it just made me want a Captain Boomerang game. Like, like,
He's he's really good in this game. Like really good. They do such a like again the characterizations for the three main characters, not Deadshot, he's boring as fuck, but the other three characters are fantastic.
Yeah,
Like this is one of the best versions of Harley. And people have been criticizing her face. I think her face has more personality than she's ever had.
yeah, yeah.
Like there's
The
parts where you just
faces
see
are
her kind of
really
emoting,
good.
and it
The
looks,
faces are
oh, the
really
faces are
good.
fantastic. Except for
Mm,
Deadshot, he has no personality. Fuck him. But every other person in this game is fantastic. Like they do such a good job. Yeah, what's her name? Deborah Wilson is Amanda Waller.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but again, like it is the type of game that, like honestly, I as much as I hate this game, I would love to dive more deeper into the end game stuff if I had people to play with,
Yeah.
but I don't know a single person that has bought this game, and I cannot recommend to buy this game
No.
to a single person.
This is the kind of game I hate to say it. This is the kind of game I will play when it comes to some sort of subscription service, or when
And
it
I'll
is.
jump back in and play it because again, like there are seeds of a good game here. That's the thing that
Yeah,
sucks so much.
yeah. It's so frustrating. I also it made me think before we move on because we've only got a little bit of time here. It did
Yeah.
make me think. Why is it that live service games and live service elements like the kind of small incremental stat things work in a game like, for example, Division 2, where it actually works there and it makes sense and people like it and it's. And let's be real, I've played like 250 hours of that game. It's actually fun to do that content
I
again and
think it's
again
the
and
loop
again.
because like you get a lot of really good set pieces in Division 2. Like
Yeah,
that the Space Museum,
yeah.
like there's some great moments, but again in here there's not one landmark. Like you see the Daily Planet, you see Luther's Tower, you see the
Yeah.
Hall of Justice, you see that stuff, but Metropolis to me is such a boring city.
Mm.
Gotham had personality. Like
Yeah.
when you were playing Arkham City for the first time, like you just looked over the city and you were just like, "Oh my God, there's so much to do here."
Yeah.
But the problem is with Suicide Squad is that there's no good mission types. There's basically like follow something to get to its target.
Mm.
There's blow up these batteries to then unlock the ability to blow up other batteries, and then rescuing hostages and stuff like
I
that. Like again,
guess
there's just
I
nothing
guess
fun.
the one part of that content side of things is that being a live service game, if they felt inclined to do so, the content part of it is actually the easiest thing to update and change. Like,
I just wish the I wish the Justice League had more members
yeah.
to go through because there's not many. Like, where's Hawkman? Where's Hawk Girl? Where's Green Arrow? Where is like
Yeah, that
Martian Manhunter? Like,
maybe
again, like
maybe they are going to be used in future seasons. Maybe that's the plan.
maybe, but I just kind of wish that there were more like side things, like maybe that we encountered Bane or Black Mask and had to fight them. Like, like just have they could have had these districts that are controlled by these gang members through Brainiac, so then you would unlock Black Mask's mission and stuff like that and defeat him and then get his parts line for all of the weapons and stuff. Like it's just weird. Like it just feels like an extremely underbaked game. And like I'm hopeful
To
that
me,
like the content that comes out, because like I'm hoping the content's free. I haven't checked, but I mean like I'm not paying for Joker. There's supposed to be a Lady Freeze, like Mrs. Freeze, like it's supposed to be like I think Nora Freeze instead of Victor, because
um,
that was like leaked
so
apparently.
to me, it would have been. It almost sounds like this game actually would have benefited from being structured almost more like a Far Cry game, where in Far
Yeah,
Cry how in I think it was Far Cry 5 you had the family to deal with and you had each different area of the map
yeah.
was a specific family member and
They
and
they kind of do that here. Like when you get closer to Green Lantern, the constructs start appearing a bit more. And
interesting.
then you do have like Batman infused enemies and stuff. And the thing is, I am still 100% convinced that when we defeat the 13th Brainiac, we find out that the Justice League were clones all along.
Yeah, that from everything I've heard, that sounds like what is gonna happen. So, like,
I'm pretty sure the
yeah,
last mission will be us infiltrating and we will find the actual bodies of the heroes.
yeah, yeah,
But
probably,
yeah,
probably.
um,
But
the
let's
last game
move
before
on now
we
because you have played
yeah,
something that people have been waiting a very long time for. What is that game, Jeff?
Pixel Story of Seasons. No, I did play that. The review is out. Read it. But no, I've been playing a little bit of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm only about 2 hours in. I'm still not done the tutorial chapter, so I can't do
Okay.
too much stuff in the game, and it
Please
hasn't got
avoid
to the very
story
open world
spoilers
game.
because once I have my 2 reviews out of the way
Cloud
that I'm
dies in the
currently
first
working
5 minutes.
on, I will be playing Rebirth. That's my next
I'm
big
still
thing.
confused in the first 2 hours of whether or not there are actually two timelines going because part of it doesn't make sense and I'm pretty sure it will. I don't know. Um, but like it's gorgeous, but it also has a lot of little things. I've tried playing under graphics mode and I found that I'm getting a lot of artifacting when I'm spinning the camera around.
Interesting.
So I'm playing on it's probably just my TV. It probably just a refresh rate problem on my TV. So I'm playing under performance mode, which is 60 FPS, but at 1080p,
Yes, yeah.
I think. So I'm not playing the 4K mode because again, I'm getting a lot of artifacting. Um,
I have heard that it looks quite blurry in the 1080p performance mode though. Have you had any issues with that?
not that I have, not that has really stood out to me yet.
Okay.
Um, but there's parts where that still look a little like the textures aren't amazing.
Oh,
Like
okay.
there's a door to the hotel that
I always
Sephiroth
so
is
that
at.
that was actually my biggest issue in the on the previous release of Remake, like when it was on PS4. I always remember looking at the doors or like the skybox, which was basically not. Do you remember that original
Yeah,
sky? And it was just,
like again, like this game looks very, very good, but there are some times where um there are just I don't know, just little blurry elements. Like the texturing doesn't look
that makes sense.
fantastic on everything.
How does the
They really want to have the terrain be very bumpy and rocky up this one cliff. So like you're constantly climbing up shit,
how
which
does
makes me wonder
I
how they
have
built the refinery in the
I
first
have
place.
to ask because obviously you know I was a fan of Final Fantasy 16, right?
Yeah.
Big fan, and obviously had issues with that game. Wasn't really an RPG, all that kind of thing, and that's more of an action-based combat game. How is the combat here in Rebirth compared to
So
Remake? Because obviously that
so
was
you,
very slow. Have they kind of sped it up a
you
bit?
do
What
have
are they doing?
yeah, you do have action and you do have classic. I haven't tried classic because I wanted the action element, so I'll research more about the classic one when I go to write the review. But I'm playing under action right now, which it basically has your standard attack, and then it also has like a special. So for Cloud, for example, it changes your fighting style,
Yes, yeah.
and then you just keep hitting down the square button, and then you press X to bring up
Is
your
it
active time
largely
battle.
the same as Remake so far? Because I remember in
It
Remake,
it feels, a little bit more, fleshed out. It feels more like Intergrades combat where they kind of updated a few things.
interesting.
So,
Okay.
like, you still have your active time battle, which pauses, and then you select your abilities and all that kind of stuff, and you have team
Yes.
up attacks as well now too, like synergies, which they had in Intergrade.
Mhm.
Um, I so far I've only been able to play as Cloud or Sephiroth in the beginning part because, like, he's
Yeah.
telling a story and it's going through the stuff of, Zach, like, but Cloud's there because, like, again, like you played those moments as Zach. So like I'm still
Yeah.
waiting for Tifa to be like, but Cloud, you weren't there. Like I'm still waiting for that, but so far she's right up there in the story going, yep, that's exactly what happened,
I
Cloud.
mean,
Good job.
I'm thinking that like in my head, and I've never actually played the original Final Fantasy VII, just for clarity.
I
Um,
got to the snowboarding and stopped.
but I'm thinking that there's probably two timelines going on here, and one is basically going to be much closer to the original Final Fantasy VII, and then one is going to be something completely different.
Yeah, because like remake, like again, spoilers for remake, there are supernatural forces at play that are kind of altering
Yeah,
events.
and they were
So
not
like
in the
for
original game. I know that I know that.
so like Aerith, you know,
Yeah,
Aerith might make it out alive. You
she
know, who
might
knows?
this time.
Who
Yeah.
knows? But I mean, like again, like the opening and stuff, and I'll be very vague about it. The opening essentially has this big catastrophe happen where, like, the Sector 7 plate came down and there's just chaos everywhere. But then they're putting they're capturing and they're putting away the like unconscious bodies of like Aerith and Tifa and Red 13 on like um hospital gurneys and stuff like that into helicopters. And this footage was in the Game Awards or the Summer Game Fest footage. And and then you play as another character who technically kind of shouldn't be involved in this particular part. And then you kind of go through and like shoot down one of the helicopters, whatever like that. And then they're like there with one of the other characters. And then it cuts down to the feather, then going down to like this flashback where essentially Cloud is talking with everybody in a room in present day. What happened to the helicopters? I don't know. And then you kind of go through this flashback of Cloud playing in the role of Zack during was it Reunion, the
Yeah, I believe
remake
so.
that
Yeah,
they put out?
reunion. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like I don't again like I know the original story of Seven, like I know like Cloud's deal essentially that's been well documented throughout
I've tried to avoid it as much as
histories.
possible. Obviously, spoilers for the original. I do
Yeah,
know that Aerith died in the original, but that's kind
yeah,
of the one major thing that I know. Other than that, I
yeah,
don't know anything. Um,
yeah. Like you'll find out Cloud's deal. They'll explain it here as far as I know. But again, they're going some very different routes because certain things happened in Reunion that don't appear to happen here.
yeah,
So like Reunion is a weird game that they re-released and brought out a remake, but then did absolutely nothing to tie it to remake.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, like it again, like Rebirth so far, again, I'm only 2 hours in out of a 100-hour game.
yes, yeah,
Um, I've only scratched the surface on it, but everything seems very streamlined. The menus and stuff is really, really nice. Like combat so far, absolutely fantastic. And like it's a very, very good looking game despite any graphics mode that you're playing at and stuff like
yes.
that. I might end up trying graphics mode again and seeing if just rebooting my PlayStation kind of helped or anything like that. Um, but no, it is a very, very good looking game. I think it's Unreal Engine 5. I've only noticed a little bit of pop in. There's one part where it kind of zooms in on the reactor and you can see some paint on the ground and the paint kind of pops in.
I mean, to be fair, you're always gonna have in every single game ever made. You're always gonna have some element of popping. To me,
Yeah.
it's when that popping becomes very very obvious and
Yeah.
consistently all the time. That's when it becomes like
Yeah,
it
and
stops me from engaging in the game. But the odd occasion like that, like you said, a bit of paint on the floor or something, like that's
yeah,
not really gonna hurt anybody.
I was researching the graphics mode in terms of anybody getting artifacting, and I've seen a lot of people like bashing the game's visuals, saying it looks early PS4, and I'm like, not really. Like, it looks so much better than the
Based on what
PS4
I've
version
seen,
of
it looks
Remake.
so good. Yeah, it looks.
Yeah, like it looks absolutely gorgeous. Like,
I think the problem is this always happens with graphics because in hindsight when we look back on old games and when we're remembering them, they always look better than we actually in our memory than
yes,
they actually do.
but a lot of people don't take in effect that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has far more detail in its environments, far bigger environments, which means you
Yes.
have to compress certain things
Yeah.
to optimize those
Was
games to work.
was kind of like going back to Suicide Squad that you spoke about just now. I saw something about the Harley Quinn model, and some people saying like,
Yeah, Alana Pierce was.
how is it less detailed? And it's like, it's less detailed because the game is so much bigger, so they have to
Yeah, Alana
use that
Pierce
detail
mentioned
somewhere.
that on YouTube short.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I didn't
yeah,
see
she was
that.
mentioning that and talking about how like even like the little pom pom things she has are in different positions because they can't because there's more physics at play, so they can't cover her face as much.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I
There is a
mean.
funny
There
part.
are obviously aspects like that that the general player doesn't even consider
Yeah,
because it
and
doesn't come into your thinking.
back to Suicide Squad for a second. You know how in Batman he grabs Suicide or he grabs Harley and puts him on her shoulder, and then her ass is just like sitting on the camera. She does that to Batman. She's like, "No, nobody help me!" And she slaps him over his shoulder, and his ass is just on the camera. She's like, "All right, let's go."
Brilliant. But yeah,
Um,
I'm happy to hear that Rebirth is sounding good. It sounds like it
yeah,
looks good.
I'm gonna drop another 6 or 7 hours into it today. Then I have
Nice.
all next week off
I
except for Monday, Tuesday.
I am hoping that by the time we record next week, I will at least have had a few hours available to play it, because one of the reviews that I'm working on should be done within the next couple of days. It's actually a bit more of a simple one. So look out for that, which I won't say exactly when, but you will be seeing that review around the time that you're seeing this episode, I would imagine. So look out for a review from me on the website. And then obviously the Infinite Wealth review, and that kind of just depends on how long this final chapter takes me and then writing it, because I do think, as I said, it's going to be a longer review, so that one might take me a bit longer. But once I've finished with that game, writing stuff takes a few hours, right? Rather than, so I can then have time to
Oh God, it
play.
takes me days. It takes me days to sometimes write a review. My
Oh, it
God.
has done. It has done for me in the past, because you'll write something and then it's like, oh no, I want to change that, or I've missed this little bit of context that I want to add. But yeah, so hopefully you'll get some reviews out of me soon, so keep an eye on the site for those. And like I said, we will be talking about more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth over the coming weeks, I'm sure. Jeff is leading our review on that one, but depending on when I also finish it, we may end up with a second take, because if you're not aware, what we do on Analog Stick Gaming, which is different to other websites, is that if we finish a game around the same time, and as long as we're not holding up the review, we will add a second take to the review, which is almost like a second mini review within the main review itself. So we did that for the AEW game last year, where I did the official review, but then Jeff had his take on the game as well, because we want to add a unique perspective to our reviews, and that will, in some cases, I'm sure in the future, that will lead to a situation where actually you might have two somewhat opposing views on a game, but we label it well enough that you can see whose opinion is whose. And
Yeah.
I really like that from us. I think it's a nice, unique thing. So look out for potentially that as well. But given how long Rebirth is as a game, it's going to be interesting to
Well,
see.
Rebirth. Yeah, like Rebirth won't be my next review. I currently have a game I'm playing on Steam Deck right now. It's about 20 hours. That I got. The developer reached out to me specifically. They found us on Twitter. So they sent me
Nice,
that. So it's a neat little like throwback kind of
nice.
JRPG. So I'm playing that right now as well too on my Steam Deck. Um, and then I've got another code coming incoming for an embargoed game that I'm gonna try and fast track that review as much as possible.
That makes
And
sense,
then
because
and
obviously,
then
and this is the thing as well. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about Infinite Wealth. Is like, I could finish Infinite Wealth today and go and write that review, but when we have a code come in that is for an embargoed game, we're always going to prioritize that stuff first because it just makes the most sense for us and it makes the most sense
Yeah,
for the people
and
that send us these
I've been looking
codes.
forward to this one for a while. So that should be pretty decent. I'm going to reach out, however, because there's a certain trucking game that I wouldn't mind actually trying as well too.
Nice.
That
Nice.
is released today on if you have the deluxe editions and all that kind of stuff of the Mud Runner game.
Do you know what the scary thing is, Jeff? In 3 weeks from today, so from our recording day, 3 weeks today, Dragon's Dogma 2 and Rise of Ronin both release on the same day. And I don't.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Dragon's Dogma over that because I think I'm gonna have more fun with it.
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking so far as well. My one concern, and don't worry, people, our episode is ending shortly. My one concern with that is I feel like that's going to be another massive game, and I don't know between playing Infinite Wealth and then going on to play Rebirth shortly. I don't know if I want 3 massive games back to back to back that all have some level of similarities. So I may, because I can only really afford to get one of those games. So I may get Rise of Ronin instead, just to have something a little different to play. But I'm not sure yet.
Well, I think the next one I buy is going to be Stellar Blade because I'm really looking forward to that.
Nice. That game does look good. To be fair, I
Yeah,
have
depending
to
on
say.
financials and stuff like that, it'll hard to say if I get Dragon's Dogma, but if I do get Dragon's Dogma, I will review it.
Yeah.
Um, but no, like yeah, like Final Fantasy, I lucked out. I ended up getting some Amazon gift credit.
Nice.
Um, so I was able to snag that and stuff like that too.
Nice.
But
Fantastic.
yeah.
Well, what I'll say is that's the end of our episode for now. We will be
Well,
back.
well, we'll
Go
be
on.
clear on the question for the week as well too. So in the comments below and stuff like that, tell us like, are you still playing a live service game? What is kind of keeping you playing
Yeah.
that live service game, and go into depth on it. Like,
And
what do you
also,
feel is the issue that prevents you from playing other ones?
as a bonus to that, would you like to see more live service games? That's what I'm interested in.
Bring
Because
back Marvel Heroes Omega.
but yeah, that's the end of our episode for now. We will be back in the future. I'm not going to guarantee anything because that never happens anymore. But we will be back and we will be talking in the future about more Infinite Wealth. And the one thing I will guarantee is you will get a spoiler cast for that game. That will happen when, as I said, when Jeff manages to finish that. He's
I'm
about.
gonna try and I'm gonna try and beat it next week. Because again,
Nice.
like I've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. I've got
You're
4 days
you're
off.
you're currently about halfway through the game, I believe, or just under halfway through.
Yeah, I'm only
Um,
about 20 some hours in.
so there you have that, and once Jeff's beaten that, we will arrange to record a spoiler cast. Like I said, we're gonna have a guest on for that because that's what I'd like to keep doing with these spoiler casts that we do. I think it would be like a nice little tradition. We did it with our Alan Wake 2 spoiler cast. I think it'll be a nice little thing for the podcast. Um, and we obviously will speak about more Rebirth as I play it and as Jeff plays more of it. If you're playing Rebirth, let us know in the comments. Don't spoil anything, but let us know what do you think so far. And yeah, I think that's it. And we will see you next time. So for now, it's a goodbye from me.